Obamacare is here to stay, and that's according to Republican Congress critter Cathy McMorris Rodgers. But is it? Or did she really even say that? I'm Steve Green, this is Trifecta. Let's bring on Scott Ott and Bill Whittle and get down to the bottom of this week's big will it, won't it, did she, didn't she issue. I think I said all that right. This whole thing got started late last week with a story in Spokane's Spokesman Review. Here's the juicy bit for you. It reads, with the news this week that more than 600,000 Washington residents have acquired new health care plans through the state exchange, U.S. Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers said it's unlikely the Affordable Care Act will be repealed. She was quoted, "We need to look at reforming the exchanges," the Eastern Washington Republicans said Thursday. I say reforming the exchanges. Scott, we have the IRS in possession of our medical records. We have doctors spending 2 hours a day dealing with Obamacare, according to one doctor in the Wall Street Journal this week. All the rest of this mess, and McMorris Rodgers said we need to look at reforming the exchanges, which is arguably the one part of Obamacare that kind of, sort of, almost works. Is this a winning position for the GOP?
Well, it's winning, but it's not winning for the GOP. I mean, this has been the goal of the Obama administration from the beginning, was get enough of the mechanism in place so that it has a sense of inevitability, so that it seems to be, you know, the status quo, and that we can't go backward. We always have to move forward. And so that's been the president's song all along. It's, you know, this thing got passed, it's in place, you know, stop crying and let's move forward. Now, it's really concerning to me as we get more and more Republicans. I mean, some of those were with the president from the beginning, let's be honest. But some of them are finally just sort of throwing up their hands and saying, well, I don't see a way forward to win this next election if I say that the thing needs to be repealed. Who really believes it can be? And that has a self-fulfilling prophetic effect.
Oh, you know, we're going to get to that in just a sec. But first, apparently the Washington Congress critter got an earful from her constituents because her office quickly released a denial. Here it is. It said the headline is not an accurate or representative portrayal of what the Congresswoman said in the interview, what her voting record reflects, or what she believes. She will continue fighting to repeal Obamacare at every opportunity moving forward and replace it with patient-centered reforms, McMorris Rodgers spokesman Nate Hudson said. Now, to me, that doesn't seem like much of a denial because it only denies what the headline said, which is something the headline writer wrote, and not what McMorris Rodgers was quoted as saying in the story. Bill, the national GOP seems to think that Obamacare is the settled law of the land. Shouldn't we just lie back and enjoy the inevitable?
The national GOP can be put on a small raft, pushed off into the ocean and covered with pine tar and have a slow fuse lit to it as far as I'm concerned, and then just be something to highlight our evening sunsets as we sit on the beach with our margaritas enjoying our newfound freedom, watching the wreckage of this horrible thing burn in the ocean. The bottom line is this. If you are in favor of Obamacare, this is my personal opinion obviously, but if you are in favor of socialized medicine for any reason whatsoever, then you are not a conservative by the definition of the term conservative. The entire idea of conservatism is the idea of control over your own life, free choice, free responsibility, freedom to pick, private enterprise, and so on and so on and so on. And socialized health care is the antithesis of all these things and has led to a disaster everywhere we see it employed. So if you're in favor of it in any way, shape, or form, as far as I'm concerned, that voids your conservative card. It certainly doesn't void your Republican card, but that's really the issue, isn't it? So we really have to start asking ourselves this question. If it's a question of getting along with these Republicans who are weak on Obamacare or in favor of Obamacare, it means we've got to get along in order to get a bigger coalition. You have to start asking yourself, at what point does this become essentially ideologically similar to having Dwight Eisenhower, the commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in Europe, in 1942-43 saying from England, basically, you know, we're just going to have to accept the fact that Adolf Hitler has taken over France. He's conquered France. He obviously owns most of Germany, Poland, Austria, and so on. Hopefully we can contain him at the Russian border and not allow him to move into Britain and stop his expanses into Spain and Italy. Now, if your commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force is saying that basically Hitler's overthrow of European freedom and democracy is a fait accompli, we just have to accept it, you might think it'd be time to get a different commander. You might think that this maybe isn't the guy needed to prosecute the war. We had this exact same situation in the Civil War, by the way, with George McClellan, who ideologically was basically favoring the Confederacy. Just, you know what, just why don't you all just come on back, bring your slaves with you, we'll call it a day. So, look, it's not a question of pettiness. It's not a question of like splitting hairs. This is the fundamental issue of our day. It defines the difference between the two parties. And if this woman is ready to accept it and just say, hey, we're just going to have to swallow it, then she will pay the price at the polls, presumably.
Well, we can hope. You know, folks, there's a broader problem here. It's this disconnect, and Bill touched on this. Actually, Bill explained this, but I've got a slightly different angle. It's a disconnect between the establishment GOP and the grassroots. Now, I know we've talked about this before at length, but there's a great new example from none other than House Speaker John Boehner. Here's a little something from a Washington Post editorial I read yesterday. Asked about immigration reform, the Speaker squarely blamed his GOP caucus with more than a hint of derision. Here's the attitude, he said, scrunching up his face and delivering the real Republican excuse in a toddler's whine. Oh, don't make me do this. Oh, this is too hard. That's right. The Speaker of the House mocking his own caucus and by extension his own constituents. So it looks to me like the National Party is a zoo filled with mockingbirds, rhinos, and cheese-eating surrender monkeys. So I'll leave you a little something from Simon and Garfunkel, who sang in their song At the Zoo, "The elephants are kindly, but they're dumb." For Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, I'm Steve Green.